What's up, guys? It's been a while. It's been a good while, actually. Mostly because of this. I bought a Switch. Been playing a lot of Mario Maker 2. But now we're gonna get back in it. Mostly because for a few friends of mine who really want me to do this, like Dean, Robert, Tim, a few other people. But anyway, let's do it. So I'm gonna be talking about Batman Year One. I'm gonna do all these issues, this whole storyline in one video, getting back to the 100 bats. So this will be Batman 404, 405, 406, and 407, which tells the pretty legendary story of Batman Year One, retelling his origin story after Infinite Crisis. So let's get into it. And so the story is pretty simple. It's about two guys coming to Gotham. One of them is Jim Gordon, one of them is Bruce Wayne, and they both essentially have their idea of how they're going to fix things, and then they're both essentially rudely awakened to the realities of Gotham City, and their plans for how they're gonna do things doesn't go well, culminating in the fact that they realize that they need each other. And that's one of the things that's great about the story, is it culminates in the pact, that the partnership that forms between Batman and Commissioner Gordon. And that's one of the things I think I've talked about before that I love about Batman, is that, and Grant Morrison stressed this in his work, that he doesn't work alone. He lost his parents, but he's rebuilt his own new family with Robin, Alfred, Gordon, Barbara, all those people that he's built up as his team. That's the family that replaced the family that he lost. And so, but this specifically talks about the family that he creates with Gordon, or at least the partnership. And so this is the Absolute Edition. It's got tons of cool things in the back I'll get into. But that's the basis of the story, is that it's not just an origin of Batman. It's the formation of the partnership between Batman and Commissioner Gordon. And, first, I'm going to just start by showing you all the different versions that I have, because I've got a few. So this is the first trade that came out, I want to say 88? I think that's right. Yeah, 1988. Yep. This is the very first trade. This is a hardcover. That's the dust jacket. So this is what it looks like. Pretty simple logo on the front. I think this is the first version I ever had of it, I think. But got this trade used. Also have the issues. Also have the Absolute Edition. And so this is a bigger version of that first trade paperback, with the has like redone coloring than the issues had. That's why it also comes with this oversized version of the issues. So the original coloring, looks like, dot pattern, limited color palette kind of thing. With the new coloring is more of like painted version that Richmond Lewis did. And the last version I have, one last version, is this. This is like a leather bound, the complete Frank Miller Batman work. So it has like, Dark Knight Returns Year One and this short like Santa Claus story that he did. I actually don't remember that Batman story, but this also just reprints the that recolored version from that hardcover trade paperback from '88. I'm not sure what year this actually came out. Let's see, 89. So yeah, this is around probably around the Batman movie is probably why they did this. But this is a great collection. So also has Dark Knight Returns, which is amazing. Alright, so those are all the different versions. So one of the first things I discovered, kind of like reading about this, was that Mazzucchelli and Frank Miller's original intention was to do this as a graphic novel, as a hardcover graphic novel, and it was Denny O'Neil, the editor, who convinced them to do it in the Batman title in issues. And I think I think Miller specifically wasn't crazy about that idea at first, because he was just more interested in, because he'd already done Ronin at this point, which in the format of that book, you know, was much nicer paper, much nicer printing quality. I think he was wanting to do something like that again, but O'Neill convinced him to do this with it, you know, a clear stipulation in their contract to release it in that hardcover soon afterwards, just months after the publication of the last issue. That was something that Miller was specifically wanting to do. So I'm going to talk about the coloring here and do like kind of a comparison. And it's some things are like very similar, and then some things are like drastically different. And so this colorist, if you don't know, her name is Richmond Lewis, and her work is fantastic. She didn't do a ton of comic stuff. I have some other stuff that she colored that I'll show you. But she's the wife of David Mazzucchelli. And I think that's really interesting, because one of the things I've been thinking about is how kind of different the artwork is in here as opposed to like an issue of Daredevil or something. So like, if you just like look at a random issue of Mazzucchelli's Daredevil that he did, like, so this is like a year or two, this is about a year before year one. Like, it looks great, it's fantastic, but it's quite a bit different in the way, especially in the inking. I feel like maybe, I feel like his figures are pretty similar, but I think his inking is very different. And what I was wondering is, was that because of he knew he was working with his wife as the colorist, and I'm wondering how much he changed his art style to suit her coloring aesthetic, or just their process together. I wonder how closely they worked together, or if, you know, he just did his thing and then afterwards she did her thing. I don't know. There is definitely, I'll tell you one thing, there's definitely not a lot you can find out about her. I couldn't find any pictures of her. Just to like, I just kept trying to figure out, because a lot of times I was finding like articles and I just wasn't sure that it was even about her, and I was trying to like figure out what she looked like and trying to find out more about her. There's not a ton of info out there. Here's some paintings she did. I found these. These were in an exhibition. So she was, you know, most people might know her name from coloring this Batman story, but she was an accomplished painter and still is. And so these are some of her paintings, just like really like, you know, or these organic, bold colored shapes. It's interesting stuff. But so she's, you know, at this point is already an accomplished painter when she worked on this. And she did a few, you know, like I said, some other gigs coloring and stuff. But man, what an impact this book has had on most of the colorists that are out there today. It's just so, these flat, like bold choices. It's like these purples and pinks, and a lot of these like having pink right here, like that's not like a normal thing. Like if you look again, look at this Daredevil, everything's like pretty, you know, it's not bad at all. It's just not, there's not as much interesting stuff going on. No offense to whoever colored this one. Christy Shiel, I don't know that name. But yeah, most, you know, comic book coloring just wasn't this interesting. But again, I'll try to like do some comparison here. So what she did, so for these individual issues, she wow, what a difference that is right there between these two pages. So what she did was, with these individual issues that were printed on newsprint, she did like the normal, you know, color guide, picking, you know, flat colors from their limited palette for each thing. And then but knowing that what she was going to do for this was very different. So her process for the graphic novel hardcover version, so she would take, these are all like hand painted colors. So she would take like you know, like a board that would I think had like the blue line from Mazzucchelli's pencils, or I guess inks. So it would take his inks and reproduce it on the board in blue line, and she would paint on top of that and then overlay like a clear acetate of the black of the lettering and any of the black artwork on top of her painted board. And I guess they would take like old school printing. They would do like a stat camera, maybe run film to print from that film. That way, I assume that's what I know. Some of that's definitely the way it worked with the acetate over her painting, but I assume that's the way the printing process worked as well. But anyway, I do have some issues of the shadow that she colored. So this is Sienkiewicz on the artwork and Richmond Lewis on the colors. And so this is, let's see, 1987. Richmond Lewis, colorist. It's good stuff. Especially for back then. Like, this is more high quality paper than just newsprint. There's probably a bigger price tag on it too. Yeah, $1.50. That's a lot for back then. But anyway, so this is a good examples of her work. This is not, from what I can tell, I don't think, this is not the kind of painting style. Maybe it is. I don't think so though. I'm not sure. But I'll check out this other one as well. I don't have all of this series, but just a few. But great coloring. This stuff especially, just good, really good choices. Sienkiewicz is one of my favorite artists. It's cool to see such good coloring on him. So if you've somehow not read these comics, obviously you got to do it. I've said before in other Batman videos. Also, I don't think I said the issue. This is issue 404. But this is some of the best. This is probably the best issues that we're going to have in this run of 400 through 500. And I think it's the best Batman comic. And I think it's probably the best superhero comic, at least from this time period. I definitely think it is. But anyway, her process on it, I would love to know more about it. Let me tell you. Like I said, I tried to find more. I found, like, I could barely find Mazzucchelli interviews where he talked about this. I could find Frank Miller's stuff, but I could barely find Mazzucchelli, and I didn't find any interviews with Richmond Lewis talking about her coloring work or working with her husband David on this. Just nothing out there. If you know of any articles or any interviews, I would love to see it. So this is an interesting ad talking about the collected hardcover for Dark Knight Returns. Alright, well, I guess I'll talk about the I think honestly, like, when I was rereading this, I think this one of the series in the back, like these, maybe from starting there, like these 4 or 5 pages right here, like this sequence is some of the best storytelling I've ever seen in my life. Because you could just, if you took out all these words, it would still have such an impact, such clear storytelling. And then it ends with with Bruce. It's funny now flipping through this issue and seeing ads and stuff. I'm not used to that. But ends with Bruce seeing the bat, and this kind of legendary page. But man, all right, good stuff. I imagine most of you are pretty familiar with David Mazzucchelli. He's kind of a legendary creator, even though he hasn't done a ton of work. But I think this is some of his best work for sure. But I do have some more obscure examples. This is an issue of Star Wars. It's issue 84. It's a random issue from it's issue 84 from 1984, and it is drawn by David Mazzucchelli. Now this is pretty early stuff of his, and it's a Han Solo Chewbacca solo story. The pun not intended, and it's it's David Mazzucchelli, and it's really good. It's more of an oddity. Seeing David Mazzucchelli draw Star Wars, it's not like this is some amazing issue. It is good. It is interesting. I recommend picking it up if you can find it out of a cheap bin. That's what I did. I mean, there's a big crazy cat alien drawn by Mazzucchelli. But yeah, it's a very early example of his work, and his work early on was like more of just a normal house style before it turned into what we saw in year one, or and definitely what we would see later in his graphic novel work. That's very different stuff later on, far more interesting. Any artist would grow, but anyway, this is a cool issue. I recommend picking it up. Also, around that time, so this is a pretty legendary cover, I would think, but I don't think most people know. So this is World's Finest 302, Superman and Batman, and it has a Cary Bates, Neil Adams story. Great, right? That's good to have. But it has this backup story, and it is drawn by David Mazzucchelli, and the story. The story is interesting. The writer is David Anthony Kraft. I'm not familiar, but the story is essentially, you can try to find it if you can. If not, I'm about to spoil it. So the Justice League just did, a normal mission, and they're all leaving, and Batman and Superman are like, hey, what if we go to this bar and hang out together? And that's what they do. They go to this bar, and they're just talking about stuff, and then they, of course, get into like a bar fight. It's crazy. It's silly. And in this, I thought this was so interesting. I'm not sure if this is true, but I think it could be. I think maybe David Mazzucchelli invented the Batman no-look punch. If you're not familiar, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And so, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I don't know. But I've never seen Batman do that no-look punch before this. So this is 1984, so way before the movie. But anyway, this is another kind of oddity. The style is still, not what you would think of as David Mazzucchelli, but it's certainly worth trying to track down. And then, but eventually, what he's mostly known for is his work on Daredevil. At least before year one, this is what he was known for. A title that Frank Miller himself at one point wrote, and then wrote and drew. Again, like back, so this is 1985, so a little bit after that. Still pretty, it's really good stuff, but still pretty, like, this is pretty great, but still pretty kind of like house style, not super unique, and it's not up to the level of year one, but it's still really good stuff. All his work on Daredevil, just great stuff. This issue is 85. Track down as much of his stuff out of the cheap bins as you can for his Daredevil work. So then, eventually, you get to something like this. And this is a big difference right here. This is where it's not just Mazzucchelli. So this is 88. And I don't know what happened in between. Well, I guess year one happened in between. But so after year one, he starts doing far more stylized, like David Mazzucchelli looking stuff. And so this is an issue of Marvel Fanfare number 40. I can't recommend it enough. It's a simple little story, but the art is amazing. I'm not sure coloring. No, I'm not sure who that colorist is. But it's just a fun little story with Angel from the X-Men crashing through this lady's roof. But as you can see, it's definitely more of an interesting style than what came before. Highly recommend this issue. You can find it in cheap bins usually. And here's an issue, just a random issue of XFactor, XFactor 16, Mazzucchelli, written by the great Louise Simonson. Can't recommend this enough. This is another issue that's I don't even remember what the story's about, but I mean it's a random issue of the X-Men, not X-Men but XFactor, drawn by Mazzucchelli. So looks like there's some Morlock action. I never understood who this little guy is. Every time I see him in a story, I'm lost. But if you know who that dude is, tell me in the comments. But it looks like there's some Morlock stuff going on. It's been a while since I read it. Yeah, there's like Mask, I think is his name. I don't know. But anyway, again, Mazzucchelli issue worth picking up. He didn't do a ton of stuff. but that's some of the stuff I've got that he did. So this issue of Marvel Fanfare that had this kind of more artsy style, I think this kind of like was the beginning of him going in that direction, more of an indie comics kind of style. And that he did work in a magazine that he put out, Rubber Blanket or Rubber Blankets, I can't remember, it's one or the other. But I don't have any of those. But the work in there led to this. This is his kind of famous graphic novel. It's pretty hefty, pretty hefty book, Stereos Polyp. And it's been a while since I've read this, but I remember really digging it when it came out. Back when I read more indie comics than I read now. But very artsy stuff compared to, it's definitely no Marvel House style. A lot of spot color, a lot of just interesting stuff. I remember really digging it. I recommend it if you could find it. I should give it another read because it's been just years and years since I read it. But yeah, definitely different work, different kinds of work than the superhero stuff. It's really good stuff though. So one of the things that the story is pretty well known for is in the story, Selina Kyle is like this prostitute dominatrix kind of a character. And one of the things that's kind of funny about that is there was later an annual. So this is Catwoman Annual number 2 from 1995, and it's Catwoman Year 1, and all the annuals in 95 from DC were Year 1 annuals. And so so what this book kind of does, it pretty much tells the story of like what Selina Kyle was doing during Year 1, and it kind of walks back a bit, her being a prostitute. So she's like just a thief in this when it starts, and she kind of ends up like these dudes cut her hair off, and that's why she has short hair. It's a bit of a recon to say the least. And so she winds up like kind of just like taking refuge because she pulled off this job stealing these pearls, and she was kind of like laying low as this prostitute dominatrix in this story. So like I said, it just kind of walks that back. So it's but then like, I don't know, there's all this stuff where like she's training with these ninjas that I don't really know where that really fits into all this. But like, so she goes off and does this ninja stuff and then comes back into like kind of the main, like, because all this takes place during Year 1, this whole story. So as you can see, like this is the when Batman releases all the bats in Gotham City when he's hurt. And so anyway, so it's just an interesting little tidbit of them retconning that like a few years later. Okay, so as far as the stuff in the back that I wanted to show you is in this Absolute Edition. So this is the one with the comic printed coloring. I haven't actually gone through all of this. I'll try to get as much in the frame as I can, but it's got like full scripts at times with Miller's notes, and it's got penciled version with looks like it's got some inks on it, but yeah, it's got a lot of good stuff. Some roughs and tons of stuff. I need to go through all this because this Absolute Edition wasn't cheap, so I might as well take the time to go through it all. Let's see. Yeah, I think it's got like the full, I don't know if it's the full script for the whole thing or if it's just, I'm not sure. But man, I'm looking forward to going through that. I mean, it looks, yeah, I guess not the whole thing, but it looks like it's got a lot in there. And so this one, the one with the fancier coloring. So it's got this short comic that Mazzucchelli did. This here. I don't even remember what that was, but yeah, this is, I guess this is Mazzucchelli stuff when he was younger. Interesting. Some character sketches. Oh yeah, he did the Who's Who entries as well. You saw this in a lot of comics at that time, that ad. More script stuff, and this is, yeah, so this is where it talks about Richmond Lewis's process here. Yeah, she hand-painted, Richmond Lewis hand-painted the new colors on special art boards to which the line art had been copied in a non-reproducing blue ink, process known as blue line coloring. Okay. So yeah, That's all the extras. Good stuff. Check it out. I think a lot of these extras were in different trades too. I don't think they're even specific to the Absolute. I think there is a trade, like a cheaper, just regular trade that has those in the back. So if you really want to check those out, look for that cheaper version. Alright, well that wraps it up, I guess. So that's 404, 405, 406, 407, Batman Year 1. Just groundbreaking stuff at the time. It would go on to, you know, this would be the direction Batman would go in, like following this lead for just decades to come. And I think, you know, this has maybe been retconned to where this isn't Batman's actual origin anymore. I think in the comics now, there's that Year 0 thing, which I haven't read. I'll get to it eventually. And so, I mean, it even like inspired, you know, the Batman Begins movies. These characters were picked up. Some like the crime guys were picked up in Long Halloween, and there's even like a continuation in there's this book called Joker, the Man Who Laughs, I think, something like that, where it picks up like so this ends with, you know, him learning about the Joker for the first time, and that story picks up after that. And there's some Matt Wagner stories that also pick up straight from this. Those are worth checking out. Those are pretty good too. But anyway, so that's this. I think next I might be doing a Jim Lee video about Wildcats. I'll get back to the Image books a bit. So alright, catch you soon. Like, subscribe, comment, whatever. All that junk.